Good afternoon. Today is February 16th. Welcome to the hearings for the Ways and Means Committee. We will start with House Bill 658, which is a local Cecil County delegation bill. And I'm not sure Delegate Hornberger is presenting this. So whenever you're ready.
The one and only, Madam Chair, Delegate Hornberger representing Cecil County on HB 658. For veterans on the committee, you'll know all the successes that we've had out there at our Fair Hill Racecourse. And because this is a local bill today, we're not doing other folks to testify on it, so I'll be leading up the charge here. So as a bullet point approach on the bill, what this bill does is it clarifies what we passed last year in terms of the pari-mutuel wagering, as well as the funding for the out years to continue to have the 5-star event. So we've been working with the budget committees and the governor's office for the FY22 supplemental. The bill would add $1.3 million directly to DNR, and this would budget for the operations at the race course, and requesting that it's also repeated in the 23 budget, so the out years. The 5-star received, because of the generosity of this committee and the governor's budget in previous years, supplemental monies for the startup cost. So a couple of highlights from the bill. Requires future administrations to include $1.8 million going forward in future budget requests for the DNR Fair Hill Improvement Fund. Should I stand up? Okay, sorry. Secondly, the bill, when racing takes place on the new track and pari-mutuel betting occurs, which we're one of the only tracks in the state that can do so, this bill clarifies that the funds would go to the improvement fund. So they would all that proceeds would have to stay locally and be reinvested in the DNR property. And then specifically in that special event zone. Third, the bill provides a framework for DNR to use that money that's in the Fair Hill Improvement Fund as a grant to be an operator. And if they decide that they want to engage an outside operator, such as one that's designated by the 5-star consortium, they can do so as well. So it's enabling in that respect. So, as you all know, and some of you have actually visited the track, it's an amazing asset to the state. There are only 7 of these venues on the planet. And there's only 2 in the US, the other one being at Kentucky Downs. So it's very prestigious for us to have gotten that designation and be up and operating. And we do everything there from racing to dressage, cross country, show, and jumping. And we want to continue to do that and have, Cecil County has the largest per capita horses in the state of all the counties. So we want to continue to have that beautiful track operating and successful. And we're asking for a favorable report on the bill. Love to take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Hornberger? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 658. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next, House Bill 478, Delegate Polakovich-Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 478. This is the 3rd year I've sponsored legislation relating to our state's enterprise zone tax credits. These are property and income tax credits that are supposed to help revitalize economically distressed areas. And the program has been the subject of repeated evaluations by our Department of Legislative Services, which recommended major reforms to the program, none of which have been enacted to date. But last year, the Revenue Subcommittee decided to send my legislation to an informal summer study, which I led. And that work group consisted of representatives of the Maryland Association of Counties, the Maryland Municipal League, several local economic development offices from across the state, as well as staff from the Department of Commerce. And I want to give a special thanks to our committee's own Delegate Fellmark for being part of the group, and also to Delegate Buckle for his input. So over the course of the interim, our work group met 9 times and heard from experts from several organizations. We discussed the current state of the enterprise zone tax credit programs, as well as how the program works in other states. And I'll say that my biggest takeaway from these conversations is that local governments highly value the flexibility of the enterprise zone program. Unlike so many other economic development programs in Maryland, the enterprise zone program doesn't restrict the types of businesses that can receive tax credits. And moreover, the program accommodates both large and small businesses. And for those reasons, I actually concur with the work group's participants that the enterprise zone program should remain a standalone tax credit and should not be combined with other similar tax credits as DLS has recommended in their 2021 evaluation of the program. The legislation before you maintains the flexibility of the program to be applicable to all types of businesses and retains the program's property and income tax credits. And based on the feedback that I received from the work group, I did make substantial changes relative to last year's bill, resulting in the reforms that are before you. So the bill mostly focuses on putting financial guardrails on the program. Nearly all economic development programs in Maryland have a cap on annual cost. That's true for the biotechnology tax credits, cybersecurity, film production, research and development, job creation, and more jobs for Marylanders tax credits, but not for enterprise zones. We know that our state's resources are not unlimited, and this is one of the largest business subsidies in Maryland, with more than $600 million in tax credits having been awarded over the past 20 years. And in fact, Maryland is among a very small number of states without a fiscal cap on their enterprise zone tax credits. So the bill proposes a $60 million annual cap on property tax credits, which does allow room for growth for the program for future years. Additionally, the legislation follows the model of other states and other Maryland tax credits by imposing a per company cap on the tax credits. Most businesses receive fairly modest tax credits right now under the program, with a median property tax credit value of just $19,280 in the current fiscal year. And implementing a per property tax credit of of $500,000 will help to ensure that the program's funds are spread out amongst more businesses and will maintain the status quo for 95% of current recipients. Notably, none of the proposed changes impact existing enterprise zones or businesses that are currently receiving credits. Rather, the changes are prospective and would take effect when new zones are designated or expanded, or when new businesses move into enterprise zones. The bill also would ensure that the enterprise zone program is targeted to economically distressed areas, as the program has always intended. DLS's evaluation of the program found that a disproportionate amount of monies spent in the program go to the least distressed communities or even non-distressed areas. And in fact, in Commerce's informational testimony for the hearing today, they indicate that half the acreage currently in enterprise zones is not economically distressed. This bill focuses our state's limited resources on the communities in the most need. Lastly, the bill cleans up the reporting requirements for the program and better clarifies the respective roles of Commerce, Comptroller's Office, and SSTAT in terms of data tracking and program evaluation. So in conclusion, I would say that this bill is a compromise bill. Tried to work in good faith with the stakeholders to craft a bill that everyone can live with. The result is what I believe to be a reasonable set of reforms that constrain the state's future financial liabilities for this program, while ensuring that the program continues to offer flexible economic development incentives at the local level. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Plakovich-Carr? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 478. I'm going to call House Bill 577, but we have been unable to reach Delegate Cox at this moment in time, so I'm going to skip over that. And at the end of the list, call it one more time in case we've been able to get a hold of him. So now I will call House Bill 499. Delegate Grammer, is he in the room?
We're having the same problem reaching him.
Okay. I see Delegate Carr is here. So I will call House Bill 539. Delegate Carr. And I see there's one other individual signed up to testify after you who will have 2 minutes. So calling House Bill 539 whenever you're ready, Delegate Carr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. For the record, Delegate Al Carr here to present House Bill 539. And this is a bill that simply restores the reimbursement amount for the historic revitalization tax credit for residential owner-occupied properties back to 25%. So it was 25% in the past, and it got change to what it is currently, which is 20%. I think this was about 20 years ago. So for example, if you are replacing the roof on your historic home and the cost is $10,000, you would currently get a $2,000 rebate. But under this bill, you would get a $2,500 rebate like the way it was before. If you look at the fiscal note, this bill is surprisingly affordable. And this program, for every dollar spent, does pay back multiple times in terms of the economic activity generated. And it does help preserve our historic communities that occur in every jurisdiction in the state. And with that, I'll ask for your favorable report and turn it over to the next panelist. I know Ms. Cowan couldn't be here, so there is another person from her organization that wishes to testify.
I believe she's here.
Yeah. Oh, never mind.
So,
Yeah.
Ms. Cowan, when you'll have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Delegate Carr. My name is Ellie Cowan. I am the Director of Government Relations for Preservation Maryland. Here in support of HB 539. As the delegate mentioned, this restores the residential program of the historic revitalization tax credit to a 25% credit. That's a 25% of the qualified rehabilitation expenditure. So it is the preservation work that's being done. It's not the cost of the entire project. Also, it's worth noting that the maximum amount of the credit does not change with this. It just allows the project cost to reach up to it to be 25% of the project cost. As many of you know, recently the cost of home improvement has skyrocketed. Materials like lumber have gone up in price exponentially. Lumber has gone up 73% since April of 2020. So the cost of doing this maintenance work to historic homes has also gone up. So by restoring this credit to 25%, we believe that this will help out residents who are looking to invest in their historic homes. And I think, this is a bill that goes hand in hand with the other residential credit that's been bill that was before this committee earlier this year that tries to make this program more accessible to more people. This, we believe, is investing in our historic built environment, having people invest in their own homes, being able as homeowners to improve where they live. And so we ask for your favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Carr or Ms. Cohen? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 539. Thank you. Now calling House Bill 597. There are 3 witnesses, including Delegate Maggioni. So whenever you're ready, Delegate, you can begin.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and of course, members of the committee having me back for a second day here. I'm presenting the Honoring Their Sacrifice Act, and I believe you had one similar proposal earlier in the committee, so I'll try not to take very long. But the Honoring Their Sacrifice Act of 2022, what this bill does is increase the maximum subtraction modification on retirement income for our military, our law enforcement, corrections, fire, rescue, and emergency service personnel from 15,000, to 50,000, and reduces the age from 55 to 50. And I think we all can agree that we need to do more to keep our active duty military, our veterans, our first responders, and public safety professionals in Maryland. They're a tremendous asset, of course, to our community. And as this at a time when Maryland continues to struggle recruiting and retaining public safety professionals and first responders. And this is just one small thing that we can do to make Maryland a more attractive place for them to establish their roots. Again, I know you had one similar to this. So with that said, I'll let the people here testify that are here to support. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, Patrick Guibao for 2 minutes, please. Mr. Guibao? I see you unmuted yourself, but if you're talking, we cannot hear you. We can't see your face. Oh, it says he's connecting to audio. So I'll move to Mr. Norton, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bob Norton. I'm from District 19. I'm the president of the Maryland Military Coalition, 19 military and veterans groups in our state. I'm also a retired Army officer and the current president of the Military Officers Association of America, Maryland Council of Chapters. The Maryland Military Coalition strongly supports HB 597. As the members of this committee know, there are some 9 bills in play this session that would partially or fully eliminate the state tax on uniform services and certain public safety retired income, depending on the measure. We believe there is broad-based support in Annapolis to do more on this issue. At the heart of the matter, in our view, is keeping top talent in our state. Ultimately, our goal is eliminating the state's tax on military retired pay, as 35 states, including Nebraska this year, have already done. Year over year, the challenge appears to be projected cost, not the offsetting benefit to our state's economy, as outlined in the Maryland General Assembly's directed study, the Towson University's 2019 report on Maryland's defense industry. We believe that this issue should be looked at through the lens of its enormous potential to attract and retain highly experienced leaders who have served their country honorably. They bring the right stuff, leadership, technical skills, and other qualities that should be beneficial to our state's economy. So with that, Madam Chair, the Maryland Military Coalition recommends a favorable report on HB 597, and we thank Delegate Mangione for his leadership on this issue.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Patrick Guavel. I'm sure I butchered that, but hopefully you can connect now. Patrick? Okay. Well, are there any questions for the delegate or Mr. Norton? Oh, there, I see you, Patrick. Okay, go ahead whenever you're ready. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and the members of the Ways and Means Committee. Good afternoon. I'm Patrick Gabal, representing the Fleet Reserve Association branches and units throughout Maryland. We feel this measure is a major step in retaining uniformed service members and our state's first responders when they retire. In too many instances, these members serving our nation, when they choose to retire or leave the military, they relocate to such states as Delaware, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, because as one recently said to me, I love Maryland, but it's just too expensive to live here. As far as the military is concerned, HB 597 has features making a decision to stay much easier. Increasing the threshold from 15 to 30,000 and lowering the age limits from 55 to 50 is a vast incentive. A serviceman who retires, a serviceman who enters the military at 18 is eligible to retire at 38. Therefore, they can use the extra money, and because of their service and their training or their education, they have found better jobs and would love to stay here and be part of the community by buying homes, being enrolled in the education system for their children, their spouse, and sometimes themselves. These investments greatly aid the state's tax revenue base. So on behalf of the Fleet Reserve Association, we urge House Ways and Means Committee members to render a favorable report and commend Delegate Mangione for sponsoring this necessary bill. Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony
Thank
on
you
House,
all. Thank you, Patrick and Bob.
House
Thank-
Bill 597. Calling Delegate Brooks, House Bill 623, and there are two other individuals after Delegate Brooks who will have 2 minutes each. Hello, Delegate Brooks. Are you sure you're not on this committee?
Like I said, Madam Chair, I'm trying to obtain squatters' rights.
Well, good to see you whenever you're ready.
Okay, good enough. And you said this is House Bill 623, okay? Okay, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of this August committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of HB 623. That's an income tax subtraction modification for essential healthcare workers. You know, for the record, I'm Delegate Brooks, representing the 10th Legislative District in Baltimore County. The purpose of this bill is to allow a $2,000 subtraction modification under the Maryland income tax for essential healthcare workers to be applicable for all taxable years beginning after December 31, 2020, but before January 1, 2023. The COVID-19 pandemic shed light on the selflessness of our essential healthcare workers. In Maryland alone, there has been 970,732 cases, confirmed cases of COVID and the variant. Our essential healthcare workers were on the front line combating this pandemic. They risked their own safety to care for our loved ones, oftentimes with limited equipment, medicine, and proper protected gear. They endured long hours and tremendous amount of physical and emotional stress. There can be no debate of their invaluable response and sacrifices of our essential healthcare workers, our physicians, our EMT, our respiratory care providers during this pandemic. HB 623 provides a small token of appreciation for our unsung heroes who continue to fight this virus with courage. For that reason, I request a favorable report. And I will have my, we do have a couple of people testifying on behalf of this bill, Madam Chair, so we'll hear from them now. And I'll entertain any questions afterwards.
Thank you. So next we'll have Suhani Shatilia, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. We thank you for taking the time to consider this impactful legislation, and we thank Delegate Brooks for bringing this forward. For the record, my name is Suhani Chatalia, and I'm here on behalf of the in support of House Bill 623. This emergency bill will create a subtraction modification against the state income tax equal to $2,000 and will apply to tax years 2021 and 2022. This subtraction modification can support healthcare workers who have worked tirelessly during this catastrophic health emergency and who have put in their own time and resources into saving the lives of others. The Maryland Nurses Association is the only statewide nonprofit professional organization for registered nurses in Maryland. The Maryland Nurses Association hears firsthand the hardships and difficulties of face. Over the past 2 years, nurses have continued to serve on the front lines of the COVID-19 pandemic. Nurses have dealt with threats, violence, moral dilemmas, increased stress, longer hours, situations. Nurses also continue to face many out-of-pocket costs. Nurses often have to purchase their own clothing, such as scrubs, shoes, compression socks, and personal protective equipment, and more. The Maryland Nurses Association supports legislation that will provide financial support during this particularly difficult, stressful, and unprecedented time. Thank you for your time and your consideration of the Maryland Nurses Association's testimony. We urge the committee for a favorable report on House Bill 623. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Danita Tolson, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, I would like to say good afternoon and thank you to Delegate Brooks. Thank you for presenting House Bill 623. In 2019, the state of Maryland was put in a state of emergency due to the pandemic. All nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists were called to war, called COVID, and COVID was winning. The governor called the state of emergency, asking for all healthcare workers and first responders, including retired personnel, to help with the pandemic. The community were dying, people were wearing masks, and people not isolating. The first responders came to the request of the governor and officials to fight in the health war. Not getting lunches or breaks, standing for hours without rest, not being able to go to the restrooms like we usually do, therefore causing UTIs, which is urinary tract infections, feet discomfort, and back pain. First responders were mandated to stay sometimes over their shifts to work because their coworkers were sick or being short-staffed due to the nurse to patient ratio being omitted. Healthcare workers were put in so many directions, pulled in so many directions to teach, to give vaccinations, to work the hospitals, to educate, and to put out more nurses, and to put out the myths of the COVID vaccines. Please keep in mind, we lost several of our coworkers to COVID because it was our job to care for the sick. Bringing COVID home, sometimes our families while not knowing we were being penalized by working all these extra shifts. I ask that you support the bill. Some of us are having PTSD, depression. Many nurses are still suffering. We work those long hours over and beyond, sometimes over 80 hours a week or more. However, in the long run, we are being penalized or will be penalized by being put in another tax bracket. So we ask for your support to support House Bill 623, the income tax subtraction modification, essential healthcare workers. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Tolson.
Mhm.
I see Delegate.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, may I add that there is an amendment to the bill, and that amendment is to add a licensed respiratory care practitioner. Yeah. So I just wanted to state that. Yeah, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Delegate Patterson has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you very much, Delegate Brooks, for bringing this legislation before you. Certainly, I have people who in my district and others who have been identified as essential workers. My question is, in identifying or citing the essential workers, where are certified nursing assistants included?
Okay, certified nursing.
We know that they're being phased out, but they still exist.
Okay.
CNAs?
Yeah, Delegate Tolson, you want to answer that for certified nursing assistants?
Okay. Certified nursing assistants are part of the healthcare team. They are first responders also. So our plan is to hopefully include them because they are on the front lines with us.
Well, my question is, and are you going to modify that with an amendment? Because everyone else is identified. Licensed LPNs, registered nurses, and CNAs are not earning a lot of money. So this would mean a lot to them, but they still have to have shoes and uniforms, etc. So please give that consideration.
Okay, and let me state a correction. I say a Delegate Tolson, I meant Dr. Tolson. But Delegate Patterson, are you offering that amendment?
I'll reach out to you later to include that. Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Patterson.
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 623. Delegate Brooks, now you have House Bill 189, and there are 3 folks after you signed up to testify. So whenever you're ready, 189.
Okay, thanks again, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of this wonderful committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on behalf of HB 189, that's an income tax subtraction modification from retirement income. For the record, I'm Delegate Brooks. I represent the 10th Legislative District in Baltimore County. Yeah, the purpose of this bill is to expand the pension exclusion currently available to qualified defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans, better known as the 401k plan for private industry, 403b for healthcare institutions or schools, those type of exempt organization, and 457 plans for state and local government. Plans rollovers to IRAs or annuities are exempt from this. And what this bill is going to do, it's going to allow those plans, if you were in say a qualified plan before, and then you decided to retire or move on, then unless you roll that over into another like plan with another business or employer, then you would not be able to roll that. For instance, person A retired from the corporation. He was in a qualified plan. Then he decided that he was going to go ahead and retire. Then he wanted to roll those funds over. Then the only option there then is going to be into an IRA, a non-qualified plan. But once with that rollover, none of the characteristics that were with that qualified plan rolls over to the non-qualified plan. And I think that lends itself to some incongruity, because now the person is being penalized for rolling those funds over, so he wouldn't take the hit of getting taxed on all that money at one time. So what this bill will do, it will allow individuals who started off in an employer-sponsored plan to make that transition or make that rollover and without those particular plan losing their characteristics if they were to be rolled over into a non-qualified plan. Yeah. So that's the gist of this bill. Here again, we're trying to bring some fairness to the rollovers, and the only difference here is that this person has now decided to retire and want to roll those funds over. And we want those characteristics that were associated with that plan when it was initially set up to remain. So, and that's, so for that reason, we're going to ask for a favorable report.
Thank
Madam
you,
Chair.
Delegate
Okay.
Brooks.
Sure.
Next, Robert Goldberg, please, for 2 minutes.
Has now decided to retire.
Hello, good afternoon, Madam Chair. My name is Robert Goldberg, and I serve on the Maryland State Legislative Committee of NARF, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. NARF supports legislation that promotes the general welfare of federal annuitants and senior citizens of Maryland.
Robert Goldberg, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
No, Mr. Goldberg. Mr. Goldberg.
My name is Robert Goldberg, and I serve on the Maryland State Legislative Committee of NARF, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. NARF supports legislation that promotes the general welfare of federal annuitant senior citizens in Maryland with respect to their rights under tax laws and regulations, as well as other state legislation to protect seniors. Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
No, Mr. Goldberg, hold on. Mr. Goldberg, wait. I think you need to turn off your live stream and just talk to us. So you're probably listening to it on YouTube, which is fine. Turn that off.
I apologize for the confusion on that and the echo.
No problem. You can start from the beginning so we can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Goldberg. I serve on the Maryland State Legislative Committee of NARF, the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association. NARF supports legislation that promotes the general welfare of federal annuitant senior citizens in Maryland with respect to their rights under tax laws and regulations, as well as other state legislation to protect seniors. We represent approximately 300,000 federal employees and annuitants living in Maryland. For the continuing benefit of our membership, as well as all Maryland seniors, we support HB 189, introduced by Delegate Brooks. Maryland has one of the highest costs of living and state income taxes in the nation. This discourages aging in place and encourages migration to senior-friendly states. Many other states actively recruit seniors with tax incentives because they recognize the value of seniors as economic engines for job and revenue generation. Thus, 9 states do not have any state income tax and 14 states exempt all or part of federal pensions from state and local taxes. NARF's written testimony, which has been submitted, clearly demonstrates the cost to Maryland of senior migration. It is very large. I urge you to read it in detail. It is clear that Maryland needs to do something about this problem, and doing something is in everyone's interest. HB 189 broadens the definition of retirement plans that qualify for subtraction under the Maryland Tax Code. What is proposed is the allowance of Section 408 retirement plans as a retirement subtraction if the retirement plan consists entirely of the tax-free rollover of distributions from an employee retirement system. Since employee retirement systems already qualify for the subtraction exclusion, HB 189 basically brings about a very much needed sense of fair play to the Maryland tax codes. NARF is very pleased to support this legislation, and I thank you for your attention. And again, I apologize for the confusion with the.
Not a problem. You are not the first to do it, so.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Thanks for testifying today. Next, Benjamin Brooks Jr. Is there any relation to the delegates?
Yeah, I'm sorry, can you see me now?
Yes.
Yes, we and him go back a few years. We've hung out.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. And Mr. Goldberg, thank you for making me turn off my feed also, because I have to make the same exact technical issue. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, members of the House Ways and Means Committee, and of course, Dad, what's going on? I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on House Bill 189, the income tax subtraction modification bill that my father, Delegate Brooks, is introducing. And I will start with a story related to my father, because a lot of my life has been shaped by my exposure to my father's small business that was in our basement many years ago, back in District 10. We had a small tax practice. And two of the lessons my father taught me during this time in my life were the power of being very disciplined and self-reliant. As such, I made it a point to attempt to stay disciplined with the ultimate goal of becoming a self-reliant person as I grew up. This led me to start my own grass cutting business in the neighborhood, my first foray into my own small business and entrepreneurship. Now, back in those days, my father would tell me to take my earnings and save them for the future. And it is during this time that I was introduced to IRAs, or individual retirement accounts. Back in the late 80s and early 90s, not to date myself, the maximum contribution to an IRA was $2,000, which is far less than what it is today. But in subsequent years, it has increased to $6,000, which is proof that the need to fund one's own retirement has been interwoven into the Internal Revenue Code, or the IRC. I relay this story to you because I've discovered in my work now as a tax professional that this story is not uncommon. There are many kids like me who are now adults that chart a similar path, with the end goal of saving for the future in order to become self-reliant. And they've done this through entrepreneurship. Now, after the grass cutting business in college, I eventually started working for the family business, but then went to grad school and decided to join a larger firm that offered traditional or qualified retirement plans to its staff. But there was a downside to this. Unfortunately, by virtue of the fact that I opened up an account many years ago on my own and not through an employer-sponsored plan, it would not be classified as a qualified plan as defined by the IRC. Therefore, I and many others just like me would not be eligible to take full advantage of the pension exclusion offered by the state of Maryland when a taxpayer reaches the age of 65. The IRA I opened as a youngster could potentially cause a significant tax burden, since I chose to follow my entrepreneurial instincts and to leave the traditional form and to go back to running a family firm. Now, furthermore, I believe it is appropriate to look at some numbers to give us context as it relates to national employment.
No, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. But
I'm sorry.
Okay,
I'll wrap up right now.
Okay.
According to the Pew Charitable Trust, 35% of workers over the age of 22 don't work for employers that offer qualified retirement plans. Therefore, I support HB 189 because it allows individuals who were previously in qualified retirement plans the ability to roll over their retirement money into non-qualified plans without losing the tax characteristics and benefits associated with qualified plans. It provides more equity to those who cannot take advantage of the law as it is currently stated. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Scott Phillips, please, for 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman Atterbury and the members of the House Ways and Means Committee. To my friend Delegate Brooks, thank you for asking me to weigh in on this issue. My name is Scott Phillips. I am a local attorney, and I also run a minority business program focused on small businesses, entrepreneurs. It is federally funded. So I get to talk to literally hundreds of small businesses. I'm an advocate. These are often one-person operations. They do not have the benefit or access of qualified pension plans. Many of them have worked in corporate America and then joined or started their businesses. So this applies directly to them. For those who have planned for retirement, and many unfortunately have not, their primary savings vehicles are traditional individual retirement accounts, simplified employee pensions, KEO plans, and rollover 401ks. The trend towards self-employment is increasing. According to a 2015 Pew Research study, as been mentioned, 3 in 10 US jobs are held by self-employed and the workers they hire. There were about 44 million contingent workers, meaning agency temporary workers, temps, direct hire temps, or on-call workers, day laborers, contract company workers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Consider the gig economy: Uber, Lyft, independent drivers for Amazon, independent IT consultants. The number of folks that this applies to is growing every single day. As you deliberate on this bill, consider the men and women who will benefit. I am one of those persons. I worked in corporate America for most of my life and then came out to be an independent consultant working with small businesses. So I know this firsthand. I thank you for allowing me to submit this written testimony as well as to speak on this issue. And I ask you to consider favorably House Bill 189.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Delegate Brooks or his panel? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Delegate. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Okay.
That concludes the testimony on House Bill 189. I will recall House Bill 577. Delegate Cox is here. He was stuck in judiciary, but whenever you're ready, Delegate Cox.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and we miss you in judiciary. Congratulations on
Thank
your
you.
leadership and the speed of your committee we sometimes are jealous of. So in that light, HB 577, the motor fuel tax and sales and use tax holiday is a temporary tax holiday for all Marylanders in this financially challenging time. Currently, Marylanders are suffering from skyrocketing living prices. While the national inflation rate is at least 7.5%, the state of Maryland is sitting on a $4.6 billion surplus. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the unemployment rate in Maryland is still high. As of December, Maryland still had 5% unemployment, one of the highest rates in the nation. And as you may know from your constituents, the Maryland Unemployment Benefits Program is unfortunately suffering ongoing challenges getting people their unemployment benefits. And many in Maryland are suffering financially. This bill seeks to institute a 15-cent per gallon tax reduction from June 30th of this year until January 1st of next year, as well as reducing the state sales tax to 0% from June 30th through October 1st, 2022. The reductions this bill provides are concrete steps toward letting Marylanders use more of their hard-earned money to pay their bills and keep some financial stability. Motor fuel taxes in Maryland are currently indexed to the Consumer Price Index. Currently, Maryland gas taxes average $5.40 for a 15-gallon fill-up. So as inflation continues to grow, so does this tax, and increasing almost 10 cents a gallon a year last year alone. This year's increase will add another 10 cents a gallon, meaning it's about $7 to $10 per 15-gallon fill-up in taxes alone. So imagine we as a legislature which does not enjoy the highest of positive ratings with the public, could literally give almost $10 back at the gas pump during this tax holiday that I'm proposing in HB 577. That would certainly be a benefit for our constituents. Fuels, sales, and use taxes are regressive in nature. They have the most significant negative impact on middle and lower income brackets, and it lessens the money in the pocket, reducing the support of families and the participation in our economy. And for low-income families, these taxes eat up a larger and sometimes very significant percentage of their household income, of their household funds for those in higher income brackets. And all of this during a time of high unemployment. Maryland ranks in the upper third of state sales taxes with a 6% rate. Neighboring Delaware, for instance, has 0 sales tax. And Virginia, right across the Potomac, has a 4.3%. Their citizens are saving money on every purchase. No doubt those in Maryland who are near enough to shop in Virginia or Delaware to save on taxes do so, and that's a business loss for Maryland. The Federal Reserve analyzed the effects of the Massachusetts 2014 and 2015 sales tax holiday on weekends, and their analysis showed that daily spending in Massachusetts increased by 40%. So tax holidays are proven to boost overall economic growth. Increased spending supports small and local businesses and encourages foreign and domestic investments. And saving on taxes gives all Marylanders a chance to acquire necessary goods and make purchases that they may otherwise have been postponing. This is real and practical relief for all Marylanders at the pump and in the pocketbook, and is possible and necessary with our current record surplus. I ask you to vote favorably on this important bill to provide relief for all Marylanders. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Cox? Okay, thank you, Delegate Cox. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 577. Now I will recall House Bill 499 with Delegate Grammer, who was stuck in ENT, and there's just one person after you to testify for 2 minutes. So whenever you're ready, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Robin Grammer here to present House Bill 499. House Bill 499 phases out the taxation of retirement income in Maryland. Maryland is among the most unfriendly of states in the country to retire in. The taxation of retirement income is a major contributor. Property taxes, water and energy costs, phone and cable bills, rent, and the cost of housing. You can count on the cost of these inelastic expenditures to go up every year. What typically never increases is the benefit paid by retirement incomes. Maryland has many aging communities, people who have lived in Maryland their entire lives, people who have worked and paid taxes in Maryland their entire lives and wish to age in place, close to families, friends, and familiar communities. People of every district want to be able to retire near their children and grandchildren. I hear continually from the residents of District 6 about the inability to afford the skyrocketing cost of living in the Baltimore region. In closing, I would like the committee to consider one question. When I became a member of the legislature in 2015, the size of the budget was $39.9 billion. Last year, the size of the budget was $51 billion. That is over a 21% increase in 6 years. When we discussed this bill last year, it was questioned whether the state can afford it. If the size of the Maryland budget increases by a single dollar this year, and we have not provided relief for our retirees, I think it would be more accurate to say that we haven't made relief for our retirees a priority. In the face of skyrocketing inflation, which is putting those on fixed incomes underwater, we should eliminate the taxation of retirement income and keep Marylanders in Maryland. With that, I'd be happy to take questions, and I would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 499.
Thank you. I think there is one other person signed up. He testified previously, Robert Doyle. Yep. Mr. Doyle, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead for 2 minutes, please. Robert Doyle, whenever you're ready.
Yes, ma'am.
You can testify for 2 minutes. Go ahead.
Hi. Yes. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes.
This is HB 499?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you. I thought I missed it earlier. Thank you. I'm Bob Doyle. I'm with the State Legislative Committee of National Active Retired Federal Employees. My colleague Bob Goldberg was on a couple minutes ago on Delegate Brooks' bill. We want to thank you. We're here today to support HB 499 from Delegate Grammer. NARF represents about 300,000 federal annuitants and employees in Maryland. We've worked on a lot of senior bills in recent years. including long-term care, tax credits, decoupling, telehealth, and various tax relief bills such as this one. We appreciate Delegate Grammer's efforts. He's a champion for seniors. He's introduced this bill before, and we're happy to talk about it again. Basically, it changes the definition of qualified retirement plan to allow more retirement plans to be eligible for the pension exclusion, similar to Delegate Brooks' bill from a few minutes ago. It's a fairness issue. We think the pension exclusion was created back to help federal employees. The older of us federal employees retired under the civil service retirement system, and we do not have Social Security, but we were allowed to get the pension exclusion to make us treated like people who got Social Security to Maryland, which is not taxed. The second part of Delegate Grammer's bill gives some big tax relief to Maryland seniors, phasing in relief over 3 years. Quite a bit of relief, 100% is in fact. So we really appreciate this. I want to read a real quick quote about seniors from a military retiree advocate. He says, "This is a fiscally sound option to attract and retain valuable seniors, good neighbors who pay their bills, volunteer in the community, and have an appreciable level of discretionary income. We might lose a little revenue, but you build a stronger fiscal base." We thank you for your time today, and we hope you return a favorable report on HB 499. And thank you again, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Grammer or Mr. Doyle? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 499. Thank you, Delegate Grammer.
Thank you.
House Bill 838, Delegate Buckle, and then you have a few people coming after you for 2 minutes each, whenever you're ready.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. House Bill 838 is essentially one of the centerpiece legislative efforts from the Task Force on the Economic Future of Western Maryland, which I have had the privilege to chair over the last 2 years with Senator George Edwards from the Senate side. Many of you have known me on the committee, or we've been colleagues for several years. You know, and I think you begin to understand that economic development and growth is the issue for Western Maryland. We can all have differences of opinion about the hot button issues of the day and things that we confront here in Annapolis from policy perspectives, but economic development and growth is really not a partisan issue, and we hope wouldn't be viewed that way. The truth of the matter is that for decades, the economy of the 3 Western counties doesn't comprise all of Western Maryland in terms of the delegation, doesn't include Carroll and Frederick that are also viewed as Western Maryland here in Annapolis. But the economy of our 3 Western counties, Washington, Allegheny, and Garrett, have substantially changed. Allegheny County in particular, Washington County in particular, were at one time during my life, perhaps the earliest years of my life, were considered some of the most successful counties and communities from an economic development standpoint in the state. They were part of the industrial backbone of the state. They were part of the energy and natural resources production backbone of the state of Maryland. They were great places to live, to raise a family, to work, to retire. And it pains me to say that that has changed. That has changed in my lifetime, for a lot of factors that have nothing to do with the state of Maryland, the globalization of industry, differences in trade policies, a lot of different things that have occurred took away many industries that fed and that sustained and that grew Western Maryland. But some of the reasons are policies we've adopted here in Annapolis. Maryland is not a natural resources state anymore. It's not an energy producing state anymore, as it once was. My region of the state is the only part of the state that really participated in that economy. We have far more in common, frankly, from an economic standpoint, traditionally with Western Pennsylvania and sort of the Morgantown to Martinsburg corridor, or Wheeling to Martinsburg corridor of West Virginia, some of the most populated areas of that small state. Our economy is not the same. We don't have the same businesses. We don't have the same government jobs that folks do in the I-95 corridor and here in Annapolis. And so the intent of this bill and the intent of all of the legislation that we'll see in the coming weeks from the task force is to accept a reality that's hard for us. It's hard for us. The reality is that the way that we would have liked to have built and sustained our economy as our fathers and grandfathers did, whether it be through coal mining, whether it be through manufacturing, whether it be through timbering and natural resource extraction, is probably not going to happen because of global factors, national factors, and also because of the policies of the state of Maryland. The policies of the I-95 corridor do not really allow us to have and grow and sustain our economy. So rather than complain about that and do nothing but complain about it, rather than be angry about it, the efforts of our task force in this bill are to ask you, my friends, my colleagues from the rest of the state and the I-95 corridor in particular, to help us embark on a plan to change our economy, to help us attract modern 21st century businesses, to help us augment our infrastructure so that we can be more than just tourism. Tourism is very important to Allegheny County, to Garrett County, to Washington County, from the Antietam battlefields to Deep Creek Lake. It's a part of our economy, but it will not sustain growth and economic development and allow generations to stay where they want to stay with their families and live a successful life in and of itself. What this bill does is it provides money, quite frankly, $20 million a year for a 5-year period that will be used. There will be a board, the Western Maryland Economic Future Investment Board will be established that includes local government and economic development professionals from across the 3 counties, as well as to be chaired by an appointee of the Department of Commerce, the Secretary of Commerce. And that fund will enable us to really go out and be aggressive and be strategic and be creative and know that the resources are there, that we don't have to come back and beg, borrow, plead, or steal every year to try to get a project done. We'll know for 5 years that we have that cost certainty, that we can try to attract through capital infrastructure projects that are linked to economic development or through business development projects, essentially encouraging new growth, new development, new companies to come to our region. We have lots of tax credits in our committee. We all know that. Delegate Polakovich-Carr knows the tax credits better than almost anyone I know. I'm pretty sure we have a lot of credits. Many of them are designed for places like Western Maryland to try to help. But to be bluntly honest, right now, so far, they haven't. They've helped us hold on. They've helped us try to maintain the status quo, but they haven't sparked the kind of catalytic development in whether it be biotechnology, cybersecurity, data centers, energy technology. They haven't sparked what we need to spark. The goal of this legislation, it's a plea, essentially. It's a plea to the rest of the state to say, give us an opportunity, give us a 5-year window and sufficient guaranteed funding, and let us set out optimistically for a change. Where I live is so pessimistic. It's difficult. I think for people maybe from Howard or Anne Arundel or Montgomery County, it's difficult to understand the pessimism that those of us in Western Maryland feel every day. It wears on you, quite frankly. And we want to use this bill and some other bills as a catalyst to try to change that mentality, to be optimistic for our growth, to have a role in our growth, to know that we have the support of our state. If you want us to be more like Maryland, then you have to help us to look more like the economy, the educated economy, the 21st century economy, the growing economy of the I-95 corridor. We have the money. I know there may be some questions. We have the money. We have a $4 billion surplus. We all understand we're going to spend a lot of money over the next few years, and I don't want to be greedy about it. But we think that this is a wise and sound investment in a part of our state that, frankly, oftentimes doesn't get wise and sound investments directed towards economic development. This is the biggest ask for those of us from Western Maryland. I think you'll find that all of the members of the House of Delegates and the members of the Senate from the 3 Western counties are committed to this being the priority for our work here in the General Assembly this session. So if there are any questions, I certainly would love to have them, and thrilled to hear from folks who've signed up from across the state to testify on this bill today. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Buckle. Next, we will have Michelle Martz for 2 minutes. Michelle Martz. Okay, I see you're on here, but I'll move on to Julie McCoy, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. It's an honor to have your time. My name is Julie McCoy. I'm the Executive Director of the Allegheny County Chamber of Commerce. Our chamber represents approximately 300 businesses, and it is in support of House Bill 838. I hope you will find it considerable and a favorable report for the establishment of the Western Maryland Economic Future Investment Fund. Of the 300 members we represent, 291 of those are what our organization considers small businesses with 1 to 25 employees. These are not just investments being made in Maryland, but leaps of faith by people who have a talent and a dream to create, improve, mend, and grow in the mountains of Maryland. While the data collected and detailed in the Economic and Demographic Report for the Task Force on the Economic Future of Western Maryland is grim for Allegheny County, it offers a critical outline of why investment is gravely needed. Much care and attention has gone into the functionality and structure of the proposed investment fund, including exactly what types of capital infrastructure or business development projects might be considered. Linking investments to new or retained jobs and businesses, increased wages, or new state and local tax revenue is a win both locally and for the state. Additionally, the oversight and implementation of the fund is placed in the hands of local stakeholders that would adhere to the delineated metrics and guidelines and understand at the very core what these projects would mean for the communities in which they live and work. An example of this can be found in Wheels Up, a small business just 1 year old that has seen growth and success in Cumberland. Mandela's business is one of our 291 members, and it's important to highlight what he faced, which was a lack of strong financial resources that were readily available to meet his needs. Excellent credit, both he and his wife have good, stable jobs, a great business plan, but no collateral, as required by the accessible resources. A multitude of grants for new innovative ideas are just out of reach as well. It is through a regionally based program such as this that a business like Wheels Up and many that are not yet born would have a more reasonable chance at accessing a loan or grant where a board of people who desire to see successful investments in their own backyard can help close the gap. While this request is of great magnitude, the task force has outlined progressive recommendations governed with strategic oversight to serve as a supplemental investment for economic improvement. Thank you for consideration of a favorable report for the establishment of this vital program.
Thank you. Mary Clapsdale for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. It's good to be with all of you today. I'm Mary Clapsaddle, representing Frostburg State University. I would like to thank Delegate Buckle for his relentless advocacy on behalf of Western Maryland. A number of bills before you this session are the result of 2 years of work on the Task Force on Economic Future of Western Maryland, which you've heard a couple times already, which was co-chaired by the minority leader. This bill is the #1 priority recommendation of the task force. HB 838 establishes a fund which can be used for infrastructure projects and business development projects in Garrett, Allegheny, and Washington County to spur new businesses, retain existing ones, create and retain jobs, encourage market development, increase wages, and increase state and local tax revenues. There is a local match requirement depending on whether it's an infrastructure project. There's a 20% local buy-in. If it's a business development, it's a 10% local contribution. Unlike the statewide programs, the decisions made on investments from this fund will be made by a board of Western Maryland experts and stakeholders. The proposals, the metrics, and the funding arrangements will reflect the economic reality of the region. It's been a long-standing policy of the state to provide additional financial assistance to the regions that need it. Think disparity grants. Think One Maryland and the Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties. Think enterprise zones. This fund is simply an extension of that policy. These funds and the investments it will make a world of difference in Western Maryland. For these reasons, I urge a favorable committee report.
Thank you. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name. I think I just looked at it too quickly.
That's okay.
Next, Mr. Paul Frey for 2 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Paul Fry,
on behalf of the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. That's okay. I've been called much worse, Madam Chair. But on behalf of the Chamber, we have 575 members and over 40,000 employees. I'm testifying on behalf and in support of House Bill 838. My colleagues and Delegate Buckle expressed very well a number of the reasons, which I have in my written testimony of why this is important legislation for Western Maryland. One of our values at our chamber is collaboration. This initiative has been a collaborative effort for over 2 years. I've served on the task force, and we've engaged the private sector, the public sector, and community input. And we wanted their involvement and feedback. And we've made changes to this recommendation, this legislation over the 2 years. We think we've enhanced it. We have a great involvement, all for the betterment and economic development of Western Maryland. So for the reasons that my colleagues and Delegate Buckle have outlined in my written testimony, we really think this is great legislation for Western Maryland and to be part of the state of Maryland. And on behalf of the business and nonprofit members of our Chamber of Commerce and our community, we would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 838. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. That has been one of the hardest parts of this job is I just butcher people's names. So Michelle Martz is here, folks. She is having technical difficulties. So she did submit written as well. So we will be sure to take a look at that.
And I would just say, Madam Chair, Michelle Martz is the CEO of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, Western Maryland Health. I know that's a weird thing, but it again illustrates how we're sort of different from the rest of the state. Our primary hospital systems in Allegheny and Garrett County are actually ours is managed by the University of Pittsburgh. And Garrett County's primary hospital system is actually owned and managed by West Virginia University.
Oh,
so
here she is.
It's just it's a different scenario, but that's who Michelle is.
Well, she's here, so be quiet, Delegate.
Is she on? Okay.
Yes.
I am. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear and see you. Thank you. So whenever you're ready.
I switched to my cell phone and I was waiting on someone to let me in that way. So yeah, if you don't mind, I'd just like to give a few comments as well.
Yes, go ahead.
So obviously, as Delegate Buckle mentioned, I'm Michelle Martz. I'm the president of UPMC Western Maryland, located here in Cumberland. Thank you for allowing me to speak with you today about our support for House Bill 838. I also want to thank our delegates who sponsored this legislation as well. So at one time, our hospital, formerly the Western Maryland Health System, was one of several major employers in Allegheny County. Today, we're the largest employer with just 2,100 employees, and really only one of two large employers. So it's us and the Allegheny County Board of Education is the second largest employer. Over the years, the 32 years that I've been here, we've witnessed the negative impacts from a lot of businesses leaving our area. Kelly Springfield, PPG, Biederlack, Bayliner Boat Company, and in 2019, the Verso paper mill. So all these closures have obviously had a direct loss on the thousands of good paying jobs in Allegheny County. And what that results in then is also a negative impact on the financial health of these families in our region. And then also a negative impact on the health and well-being of our community as well, because oftentimes these unemployed individuals and their families do not seek medical treatment because they don't have health insurance or because they don't have the means to pay for their health care. So obviously having health insurance isn't a prerequisite for getting health care, but normally those that don't have insurance just really choose not to seek treatment, which is really detrimental to their families. Our hospital provided over $14 million of charity care last year, free care to patients unable to pay. And as I mentioned, there's many individuals still that don't seek treatment because they don't have the financial means, and so they suffer in silence. The average household income for Allegheny County is about $46,000 per year. The state of Maryland's $85,000 per year. So again, we can see that disparity there. This legislation will help to create and retain jobs in our Western region. So important to us, allowing the families to have the financial means to seek medical treatment and a better overall quality of life. So for these reasons, I respectfully request that the Ways and Means Committee give a favorable report to House Bill 838. And thank you for allowing me to testify and for your patience through my technical difficulties.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Buckle or any of the witnesses today who testified? Okay, seeing none, thank you all. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 838. Now calling Delegate Jones and House Bill 681, and I'm excited to see a couple of my friends I worked with on your panel through some of my more brutal years in judiciary. So I'll call Delegate Jones, and then your witnesses will have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you so very much, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and fellow members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Dana Jones. I come before you today to introduce a bill in response to the unprecedented rates of housing insecurity caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and ways I hope we can elevate another stressor on Maryland families and keep those united with their pets. A large portion of rental properties do not allow their tenants to have pets. The ones that do often have strict breed and weight restrictions, restricting a large percentage of family dogs. In fact, according to a survey of 551 owners and operators in urban and suburban areas, only 8% of rental housing is free of pet restrictions. For the 70% of renters who own a pet, many of whom faced housing insecurity as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, it can nearly be impossible to find adequate accommodations. So this forces them to make the heartbreaking decision between facing homelessness or giving up their beloved furry family members. This bill was brought to me by the Humane Society. They and other advocates who are joining me today have been working closely over the past 23 months with housing insecure individuals desperate to find a place to stay. They shared with me their personal accounts and expressed the lack of pet-friendly housing is a significant driver of housing insecurity and homelessness. Many emergency shelters do not allow animals, and rather than have to give up their pets, owners often choose to sleep on the street. HB 681 would incentivize more pet-friendly housing, rental housing, by providing an income tax credit to landlords that allow companion animals with no breed size or restrictions or non-refundable deposit in their rental properties. This credit would be $200 per pet-friendly unit, maxing out at $2,000 per landlord owner of a rental property, of rental properties. Additionally, in order to limit the fiscal note, this program would have a 2-year sunset with the recognition that the housing market may be, we hope, more stabilized at that point. Over the past 2 years, so many Marylanders have lost their jobs, family members, their homes. They shouldn't have to lose their pets too. The stress and mental health crisis that we are currently experiencing should not be exacerbated by taking a companion pet from families. We've lost a lot. Time at school with friends, time with at family gatherings. Barring a part of the family during a crisis is, I believe, cruel. I respectfully urge favorable report on this compassionate bill, and I thank you and thank the members of the panel who are here with me today. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Emily Hovermail. It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. It is so lovely to see you here in this position as chairwoman of the committee. My delegate, Delegate Atterbury, very lovely to see you. Thank you, Emily Hovermail, on behalf of the Humane Rescue Alliance and our thousands of supporters in Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of this important legislation, which, as Delegate Jones described, aims to prevent further displacement of vulnerable families and keep pets with families who love them by incentivizing pet-inclusive housing. As thousands of Marylanders face difficulty in finding safe and affordable housing for their families, restrictive rental policies for pets and exorbitant pet fees add to the barriers that renters face. According to an analysis of pet fees and rental housing published in the Frontiers and Veterinary Science Journal just last year, pet charges beyond a security deposit add to the financial barriers that low-income tenants face when trying to find housing, and unreasonable pet fees lead to poor housing security among already disadvantaged and marginalized populations. As Delegate Jones described, even when owners can't afford to pay the additional costs associated with having a pet in a rental policy, policies restricting dog breed and weight effectively eliminate a large percentage of family dogs from living in most rental units. Most of these restrictions are breed and weight restrictions. Weight restrictions are generally in the rental housing world average between 25 and 45 pounds. Many of the most popular family dogs, from Labradors to Golden Retrievers, are excluded from properties with these arbitrary limits. Just as an example, looking at the dogs available for adoption from our shelter, the Humane Rescue Alliance shelter, last week, of the 54 dogs in our care awaiting adoption, only 11 are under 45 pounds. One is under 25 pounds. Forcing families to make the devastating choice to give up their pets or give up a home is not something that we want to see in Maryland. Extensive analysis of 1.1 million US cat and dog owner surrenders from January 28 through September 2020 identified housing issues as one of the most frequently cited reasons why people relinquish their pets to animal shelters. These are pets who have loving families who would want nothing more than to be able to continue caring for them, but they have no choice but to give up their pets in order to maintain safe and affordable housing. Everyone deserves access to the well-documented benefits of the human-animal bond. For that reason, we respectfully request a favorable report for House Bill 681, because no one should have to make a devastating choice between their pet and a home.
Thank you. And next, another one of my favorite people to work with, Lisa Radoff. Good to see you. Whenever you're ready.
Great to see you, Chair Atterbury, in this elevated position. Congratulations, Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, members of the House Ways and Means Committee. My name is Lisa Radoff. I don't normally testify in front of this committee, so it's nice to see some different faces. I am the president and chairman of Maryland Votes for Animals. We work on legislation to improve the lives of animals in Maryland. Today, I'm here in support of HB 681. You have heard compelling testimony from my colleague, Emily Hovermail, and you will hear more. So I will be very brief. This bill is unique in that it is a pilot program that operates by offering an incentive. It is not a mandate for landlords. The hope is that this program will become popular not only with pet owners in search of pet-friendly housing, but also with landlords who will enjoy both tax credits and potentially increased revenue as their policies attract a new market, the pet-friendly community. This bill is a win-win. It's a win for families who can finally find affordable pet-friendly housing, and a win for landlords who get a tax credit for opening their doors to families with pets. And with that, I'd like to thank Delegate Jones for this piece of legislation, this bill that we hope will become a piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jessica Leopold, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for having me today. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jessica Leopold. I'm a social worker and the Director of Housing Services at Healthcare for the Homeless. On the Housing Services team, our job is to help clients navigate the process of searching for and transitioning to permanent housing, as well as providing supportive services to help them maintain their housing placements. Being a witness to the detrimental effects of the current policies around owning pets in rental properties, I am here in full support of HB 681. I've seen clients get the opportunity to become housed, then they are forced to give up their pet because they cannot find a landlord who will accept pets. I've also seen clients decide to keep their pets in their home, putting them at risk of eviction and incurring unreasonable fees. For our client population, being able to afford pet fees that are often non-refundable is problematic at best. Additionally, the clients we're working with often present with various mental health symptoms, such as anxiety, depression, trauma-related symptoms, and social disengagement. There is extensive research that supports the therapeutic effect of animals with those who are experiencing mental illness. Pets can improve your mood, decrease anxiety, increase your social interactions. They can help you cope with stress more effectively, and they can offer comfort and belonging to a client population that often feels overlooked or discarded. One client in particular, Mr. Smith, was homeless for 3 years after suffering a stroke and losing his job. In 2021, he was matched to permanent housing with supportive services through HCH. One of his biggest goals was to be able to reunite with his dog in his new home. His dog had been staying with a friend as Mr. Smith could not have his dog in the shelter. Luckily for Mr. Smith, the apartment he was in was willing to accept his dog into the home. His health has dramatically improved. Where he used to walk with a walker, he now takes his dog for walks and no longer needs his walker to ambulate. He enjoys introducing his dog to neighbors on their walks, which has increased his social engagement and sense of belonging in his new neighborhood. He's able to remain calm and cope with stressful situations much more effectively now that his dog is back in his home. Mr. Smith is lucky. Unfortunately, that's not the case for many of our clients with pets. Expanding the pool of landlords who are willing to accept pets and creating a centralized list of landlords who are pet inclusive.
I'm going to have to ask you to, Ms. Leopold, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, no problem. So for all of these reasons and reasons that were presented by those that testified before me and by Delegate Jones, I'm a passionate supporter of HB 681, which will give more access to housing that includes, which will give our neighbors more access to housing that includes their whole family. And I request a favorable report for this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Katie Flory, please, for 2 minutes.
Hello, Madam Chair and Vice Chair Washington and members of the committee. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify. My name is Katie Flory, and I am the Community Care and Advocacy Director for the Maryland SPCA located in Baltimore City. I am also representing the PAWS organization today, which is the Professional Animal Workers Society. We are also in favor of HB 681. And you've heard a lot of information from my colleagues today, so I don't want to reiterate what they have said, but I do want to tell you 2 stories that I have personally been involved in. The first one, many of you remember last summer when there was the explosion on Reisterstown Road. Many families were displaced during that explosion through no fault of their own, but not only were the families displaced, their pets were as well. And many of the organizations that were helping them were able to find them hotels and different places to go. But unfortunately, their pets had nowhere to go. Not only had these families been through so much trauma, but their animals were as well. We were able to take in some of the animals to place into foster until the families were able to find permanent housing. But it was an incredible challenge to find a place for them to go that would allow their pets. The second story I will tell you is in the past about 6 months, I have been working with a young woman who is homeless. She has been living on the streets for about 6 months, and she refuses to go into a shelter because of the 2 dogs that she has. And unfortunately, it's been next to impossible to find her a place to go. One is a German Shepherd and one is a Golden Retriever. Both incredibly sweet animals, spayed and neutered, your dream when it comes to what you would want in your rental property. But unfortunately, there just aren't enough landlords allowing pets into their property. On top of the other jobs that I've told you I do, I am also a private landlord. And I feel that I can speak on behalf of many property owners in the state of Maryland by saying, we would love to have this as well. This is a win-win for everybody, and it helps bring down barriers. So I ask that you do provide a favorable vote on HB 681, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And next, Jennifer Bevan Dangle, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Bevan Dangle. I'm the State Director for the Humane Society of the United States. You've already heard all the compelling reasons why we support this bill, so I will not reiterate what my panelists have already mentioned. My less fun job is to talk through some of the technical mechanics and to discuss the fiscal note, which of course is of importance to all of us. We do want to say on record, we found the fiscal note was surprisingly high, and we are very curious how that number was attained. If you look at the national statistics, only 8% of housing now would qualify for this sort of tax credit. So we're already looking at a very limited pool of housing, and it is going to take some time for landlords to come into the program, change their policies, and be able to apply for and participate in the program. So we do feel that that is a overly ambitious and overly high fiscal note. It is the reason why we kept the program, as the delegate said, at a 2-year cap. We understand we're hitting sort of an unprecedented need for expanded housing access. And we hope that within 2 years, this program will have shown that it works. More landlords will be participating, and it'll be self-sustaining after that. So we do think that by limiting it to the 2 years, we're showing, fiscal constraint there as well. We are open to capping the program, either at a number of landlords participating per jurisdiction, or at just a total cap on the money available, as we know this committee often does due to these important bills. We also want to address the fact that there are cost savings with this program. It costs between $200 and $300 for a shelter on average to take care of a dog for a month. So the local governments, by not having dogs and cats entering into their shelters for care, will be seeing some cost savings. And then finally, the comptroller put in 2 amendments. We are very comfortable with shifting from claim to award, and the defining the companion animal as dogs and cats is something we would also be comfortable with. So we hope with all the work that's been put in to make this a fiscally responsible program with the cost savings to our counties and the clear need for this program, that the committee can consider a favorable vote on House Bill 681. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegate or for any of the witnesses who testified? Okay.
Oh, I think
No,
my
you have
hand
one,
came
Patterson?
down. I think my hand came down. Yes, I do. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And for Delegate Jones, full disclosure, I'm the owner of a pet, several pets, and a private landlord. But my question has to do with the tax credit and inclusion. I understand you said companion animals. Is there a tax credit for service animals that are allowed in housing? And would they be under that same umbrella? It's for Delegate Jones or anyone else who wants.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Thank you so much for the question, Delegate Patterson. I was actually going to let Jennifer take that as we had discussed that. Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yes, and Delegate, it's a very good question. Service animals are currently protected by federal law, and so landlords have to accommodate an individual who has a service animal. So there is not a specific tax credit available to landlords who already accommodate those animals. We would worry a little bit about I don't want to say double dipping, but if you're already legally required to provide it, we aren't sure that it's as critical to incentivize the behavior change through a tax credit. Certainly a landlord that is already, allowing service animals or has service animals, hopefully they're seeing that those animals aren't very destructive, that this isn't a huge burden, and they'll be excited to participate in the tax credit and open up more of their units to this program.
All right, thank you. Maybe possibly if this works, maybe in the future consideration to include service animals as well. Thank you very much for this legislation.
Thank you so much, Delegate Patterson, for the question.
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Delegate Jones. Thank you to the witnesses, and that concludes the testimony on House Bill 681. Now I will call House Bill 641, my very first bill before the committee. So I will call myself to testify and then call the witnesses. So House Bill 641 provides a tax incentive for production companies that are engaged in qualified theater productions to launch national Broadway tours here in our state of Maryland. These, you will hear from the folks who are here to testify today, result in weeks of union wages, thousands of work hours, hotel occupancy, equipment rentals, material acquisitions, tourism income, catering agreements, cleaning, security, and so on and so on. Other states such as New York, Rhode Island, and Louisiana have been able to capitalize on this and fully utilize these types of incentives for years and benefit from the economic impact. This bill will bring wages right here to our state of Maryland where they belong. Interestingly, two of the largest producers of touring Broadway are headquartered right here in the state of Maryland. Networks Tours in Columbia, in the amazing District 13, which I happen to represent, and Troika Entertainment in Gaithersburg. But they aren't able to build tours right here in the state of Maryland where they're located. I'm just going to end there. I also do think it's important to note that the tax credit will provide youth access, which I find very important, to the artists and creators and experts, and benefit our youth here in the state of Maryland. The last 2 years of the pandemic have been devastating for the entertainment industry, you will hear, and hundreds of union workers who rely and live on entertainment to pay their mortgages and put food on their family's table. So now is the time for us to help these folks out who've been hit hard by the pandemic as well. So with that, I will call the rest of the witnesses who will have 2 minutes to testify, and I will start with Ms. Marta Harding.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Marta Harding. I represent the Hippodrome, and I'm pleased to be in front of the committee today. You're going to hear from Olive Waxter, the Executive Director of the Hippodrome Foundation, in a moment, but I'm just going to kick things off very briefly. First, a thank you to Chairwoman Atterbury for introducing the bill. Just a couple things. The bill is modeled pretty closely after the existing film tax credit that you all are familiar with, I'm sure. But obviously this is not film production. This is a different type of production. It's touring Broadway. So we also really drew on the laws in some other states, in particular Rhode Island, which is really the gold standard. And you're going to hear from the other witnesses. They really, I mean, they're booked for several years out with shows to be built and produced there, because they have a really a very popular, if you will, law in the industry, and we really think that's a good resource to draw from. The only other thing I'll just say is just to reiterate something you heard from Chairwoman Atterbury, which is that Maryland has an untapped natural advantage in this space. We've got 2 companies headquartered here that exist here that want to build their shows here. They want to sleep in their own beds while they're producing their shows and stay in the state of Maryland. And this will allow them to do that. And I think we have an advantage that no other state has in having these 2 companies, Troika and Network. So with that, I'm going to let the rest of the panel talk to you a little bit more about the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ron Legler, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the House Committee. It is very important. This is a very big win-win for us. Troika and Networks represent about 70% of the national tours that go out into the United States. Maryland really is the home of touring Broadway, and we should be celebrating that. As the chairwoman said, it's been a very devastating 18 months. We were closed. Touring Broadway was not only closed, but all live entertainment. The Hippodrome Theater is a state-owned venue. We have been stewards of this venue for the last 20 years. We partnered together in a wonderful partnership. It's one of the most successful touring Broadway houses in America. So why wouldn't we want to celebrate the fact that Troika and Network are here and that we could build these productions here? And of course, we're not the only house in Maryland that could build these productions. We've identified 5 or 6 houses throughout the state that could particularly do this and just keep a win-win. This is business that's already happening in other states. So it's not like we're trying this for the first time. We have solid models and financials on how this works. And basically for every 25 cents, we're going to return 75 cents. So there is a 25% limit with a limit of $1 million per production. We are fully vetted through the Department of Commerce. We sat with them, did a workshop, and they're very happy with the way that the results are. So this is a really big win-win for the state, and we would just urge everyone to please, this is the year. If there was ever a time or a place, this is the time. Our union workers were out for 18 months. This will stop them from having to go on unemployment for 10 weeks in the summer when everything else is closed. There are no tours happening in the summer. Our building is closed for the whole summer. This will open our building, put people to work, and launch some wonderful national tours right out of our home state of Maryland. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to a positive outcome.
Thank you. Next, Chris Mahan, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I just to reiterate some of the stuff that's been said so far, there really is such a tremendous opportunity here in HB 641 to not only make Maryland the launching pad for so many national Broadway touring shows, but to further stimulate the Maryland economy. All of these added weeks of work in the theaters, the 4 to 8 weeks of rehearsals and set building and costume making and millinery, these are real jobs. These are real hours. These are real wages that are paid that go back to Marylanders. And then those weeks result in performances. And each week of performances at our theaters results in tens of thousands of patrons coming in and parking and going to restaurants, and there's such a massive return on investment with this kind of thing. And to say it again, this is real work that is happening in other states, and it's so exciting to think that the opportunity is here to bring it home to Maryland, that we could do it all here. And on a personal note, just the process of watching a Broadway show get built, the talent and the artistry and the spectacle that goes into it is really an amazing process. And it would bring national press to Maryland. It would bring tourism in, people who would come to see these shows first before they go out across the country. And just the pride that we would have for Maryland citizens to see these shows first before anyone else. It would just be incredible. So thank you for bringing this bill to the committee, and I ask for your favorable outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ken Gentry, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ken Gentry, I'm very much in favor of this bill because for 26 years we've been in Columbia, Maryland, producing Broadway shows, such as Phantom of the Opera, Miss Saigon, Les Miserables, Kill a Mockingbird. I think currently we have Summer, the Donna Summer musical at the Hippodrome.
I'm not sure what happened, Ken, but we can't hear you. You're not muted. Maybe just go a little closer to your.
How's this?
Yes.
That's better?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Did you not hear me from the start? Do I need to start over?
We heard that you're in Columbia and you're with Network Tours.
Yep. And we've been doing this for 26 years. We typically would have, in this upcoming season, we have 12 shows that'll be touring the US. Some of our past shows, which you may or may not have seen, but have heard of, are Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables, Miss Saigon. Currently, Summer, the Donna Summer musical, is at the Hippodrome. And the list goes on. Over that period of time, we've probably produced over 100 national tours. And it's been reiterated before, Troika and we pretty much dominate the touring market, all originating out of Maryland. We have 26 local employees in Columbia. We have over 1,000 employees around the country touring or putting together tours. And we go to 52 states, including plus Canada and Mexico. Each of these shows requires 2 to 4 weeks of technical rehearsal time in a city. And it's been said before, we tend to go to where we can get the tax credit and also a favorable venue and facility and metropolitan area that provides housing and the things that are easy to get to. Baltimore is a perfect place for this. We go to Providence, which has been said before, and there's an interesting thing that happens about Providence. For years, Providence was the secondary.
Gentry, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, but I'm sure you'll get a question.
Okay. Thing that does bring that for us, there's no advantage other than it has been sleeping in our bed and also having the pride of being in Baltimore and being in Maryland to be able to do this here. But the secondary thing is it creates a great competitive advantage in that we would go open a show and originate a show in Baltimore rather than play the show first in Washington, D.C. I think that's a very important thing to think of because it creates pride for Baltimore, it creates pride for Maryland, it creates pride for us.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Next, Miss Angela Rolls, please. Rolls.
You had it right the first time. Thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Angela Rolls, and I'm the CEO of Troika Entertainment. And I'm here to support House Bill 641. I just wanted to jump on what Ken was saying about the Maryland pride. In the fall of 2019, my company had the pleasure of rehearsing and launching the national tour of The Color Purple at the Prince George's Community College in Largo, Maryland. And to spend our rehearsal time there in that community, getting to work with the students and the staff, the local vendors, support the local hotels and restaurants, it was a pleasure. And sharing that powerful story with the community was just pure joy. As it was said, our industry was hard hit by the pandemic. So this season, we were incentivized to go out of state due to the theatrical tax credits offered in the other states. And this past fall, our company launched 5 different Broadway touring productions. Each spent about 6 weeks rehearsing and performing, bringing over 100 employees per production to the rehearsal city and spending between $2.5 and $4 million per productions in those states. As a Maryland-based company, our hope is that we can continue to do our work here in our home state, supporting our own local hotels and restaurants, hiring Maryland-based stagehands, musicians, and directing state payroll taxes to the state of Maryland. As you consider this House Bill 641, please consider not only the positive economic impact to the state, but also the importance of live theater in the community, in both the job creation and in its role in bringing us all together, particularly after this last 2 years of being apart. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Next, Olive Waxter, please, for 2 minutes.
Boy, thank you so much. Toot toot, hey, beep beep. My name is Olive Waxter. I'm the Executive Director of the Hippodrome Foundation, and thank you, Chair Atterbury, for sponsoring Bill 641. Members of the team have testified to the economic and social advantages of putting this tax credit in place, but I would like to talk about the educational value to our Maryland community if we could build these shows here. The Hippodrome Foundation is the entity that worked with the state to build the Franz Marek Performing Arts Center. And once the facility opened in 2004, the foundation turned its mission to provide free outreach and education programs for Maryland youth. We provide thousands of free programs every year with free Broadway matinees, a free summer camp in the Hippodrome Theater, professional development for teachers, programs for seniors, programs for students with disabilities. And we bring creative people into the lives of Maryland young people. As an example, and Ron and I discussed this earlier, we were able to bring down the famed designer of the Anastasia's blue dress and brought her to the Baltimore Design School to interact with students on the design of a fancy ball gown. And those kind of opportunities are so meaningful to our Maryland students. Building shows at the Franz Marek Performing Arts Center and other theaters in Maryland would allow the Hippodrome Foundation to expand on the educational opportunities that we're already doing, from the costuming and the lights and the sound and the props and the set design. There's a lot of expertise and a lot of potential career opportunities for Maryland youth. And it's a shame, kills me, that these shows are being built in other states. We really do need to bring these shows to Maryland. And I hope that this committee will help us vote favorably on House Bill 641.
Thank you. And Michael Mixter, please, for 2 minutes.
Madam Chair Atterbury and House Committee members, good afternoon and thank you for your time. I'm Michael Mixter, the business agent for IATSE Local Number 19. I'm here to state my support for House Bill 641, the theatrical production tax credit. I've represented a group of skilled and diverse workers who, like all of us, have been through it the past few years. We support our families behind the scenes doing technical work in theaters and other venues throughout Maryland. Committee members, we were the first to be shut down and the last to reopen during the height of the pandemic. In fact, as recent as last week, we've had shows canceled because of this pandemic. On top of that, hundreds of our workers just received letters from the Royal Farms Arena notifying them of the elimination of position for at least a year. This tax credit will serve as a ray of sunshine to our workforce. The Hippodrome Theater is typically dark during the summer, and having this would mean the world to my membership. It will allow them to stay in the industry that they love. The arena, which is closing, is the biggest venue and serves to pick up the slack Local 19 workers' pockets when the Hippodrome is dark during the summer months. Committee members, I'm asking you, and the hundreds of workers I represent are asking you to vote yes for the theatrical production tax credit. Help us get back to work full time and support our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for myself or a member, anyone who testified? I see 3, Delegate Jones and then Delegate Feldmark, and then, well, a bunch of hands are popping up. So let's start with Delegate Jones. Oh, you guys are being funny because when I tried to get you guys all to ask questions.
We're following directions, Madam Chair.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Being hazed by my own committee. Thanks there. Okay. Well, are there any legit questions?
Yeah, I do actually have a question, Madam.
Okay. Delegate Ebersol and then Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you. I wanted to go back. It broke up a little bit, and I was interested in Ken Gentry. He's got a Columbia route, and I do too. So what was he saying about Providence? I need a little information about, could he just expand on that just a little bit?
Well, I think they were the first of the tax credits for theatrical productions. They carved it out of their film industry tax credits. And they were in the development of their downtown, which had gone pretty far south over the years. And so this was a way of helping create the infrastructure in and around the Performing Arts Center. A friend of mine runs that place, so we were the first people, I believe, to take advantage of it. And I can't remember the show. It may have been Phantom. I can't remember the show. But it's really been a very successful thing. And within our industry, not only us, but other Broadway producers, there's a real need to do this. Boston was the go-to place forever. At one time, Baltimore was one of the premier tryout, one of the pre-Broadway production cities in the country. But it's been a bit overshadowed by Washington, D.C., much like Boston had with Providence. Right now, when you're going to send a show out on the road, instead of playing in Providence 2 years down the road after it's open, it's the place you open and you go pick up something else second. They have a great deal of pride in this. They take, they have real boasting rights within their industry. And so it's been a really good win-win for both of them, for both us and the Performing Arts Center.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I answered your question, but.
No, that was good. Thank you. By the way, I have tickets to the show in the Hippodrome on Friday night. Seems a lot of character for me down the summer, but I'm looking forward to it. So.
Well, it's an interesting one. I think you'll have a good time.
You know, I just want to say too that Broadway loves animals, so we're all about HB 681 because we have cats and we will now and forever. So love animals. Appreciate you guys.
Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for your testimony, and thank you, Madam Chair, for bringing the bill. I guess my question is really about looking a little bit broader than the tax credit, and maybe it's, you know, mostly for Mr. Gentry or Ms. Rolls, but, you know, I guess what I'm wondering is we've got different states offering different tax credits, and, you know, there's a bit of a competition there. What else can we do to really sort of maximize the benefit of the tax credit in terms of the rest of the you know, ecosystem that would best support sort of nurturing these productions?
Who wants to take that?
I just want to make sure I understand the question. Is it what can we do, or what
whether it's the state or the, you know, the local governments that, you know, in the particular area where you're based, are there other services or things we can do to help facilitate and kind of make the most of these opportunities? The tax credit obviously is a big piece, right? But I think, you know, what other factors to make sure we're making the most of, you know, getting the maximum impact out of the tax credit?
Ms. Rawls, do you want to try?
Yeah, I will say one of the things that we look at when we're looking at a facility to do our rehearsals and our technical rehearsals are the how accessible things are in and around the theater in terms of hotels and restaurants and stuff. And I think Ken kind of alluded to this when he was talking about Rhode Island, but one of the things that the tax credit has helped is pour back into the community and create the area around theaters. A lot of times, some of the theaters are in areas that there aren't any hotels nearby. They're not restaurants, but by creating that space that is welcoming to an out-of-town touring company, it also creates an evening out for everyone coming to the theater and those that work and live around the theater, just extending the community around the theater.
Thank you.
I'll add to that just for a second too. I think the more, it's sort of a synergistic kind of thing that occurs when this all starts rolling out, in that support through the media and contacts that people have, it just sort of grows organically as this starts going. And over the years, and it really is a thing about bragging rights. And when I think what's happened in Baltimore, were to see how much you have already done to really expand the reach of the Hippodrome and the support that's been given there through your grants and so forth. I think that happens with this particular event too, because it is a unique thing. It gives more time. Like one of the things we do is like during the production period, right before we open for opening night, we'll have a preview. And typically we try to fill that with underprivileged kids. And so it just creates a sense of pride and worthiness for the whole thing. I think. Well, the more support that it becomes synergistic in doing this, the better it gets and the more it grows.
Thank you. Delegate Patterson, did you have a question? Your hand went down.
It did, because thank you very much, Delegate Chair Atterbury, for bringing this to us. I've found the testimony very interesting, and I'm certainly missing Broadway and so many other areas of arts and entertainment. My question has to do with regional theaters and some of the local productions. Are you getting support? Do you see this fanning out and maybe being an incentive or help for those regional productions as well? I know that the Olney Theater and Port Tobacco in Charles County is one, smaller scale, but just your thoughts on that quickly.
If I could, I'd love to answer this question. The answer is yes. I mean, we do have Center Stage just recently put a production onto Broadway. So there's opportunity. Our ability, what we do is we tell stories. We're storytellers, right? So we want to make sure all the stories are being told. When you talk about diversity and equity, I think Broadway's led it. And I think that when you start to talk about the regional theaters like Everyman and Center Stage and the wonderful places we have throughout the state of Maryland, is that working with companies like Networks and Troika, there was a small show that went out a few years ago called The Band's Visit, a very simple show that ended up winning every Tony Award that was out there. Ken's company produced that. The Color Purple, another perfect example of being able to go out and start with a large production of Color Purple, but then go down to get into the smaller theaters and get into the other communities that don't get to see Broadway as much. That was one of the most beautiful productions I've ever seen of The Color Purple. So there is a lot of opportunity to really make the Hippodrome and the Lyric and some of these other theaters become incubators for being able to tell the story. So yes, I think that would be a part, and sometimes the tax credit could make a difference whether that story is told or not, because of the financial implications for it. So I would say that we would want to work with Troika and Networks and any other Broadway producer to make sure that specific stories are told, because there's a need for those stories.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you everyone for coming to testify today, and that concludes the hearing on House Bill 641. Next, for our last two bills, welcome Delegate Rogers. We will call House Bill 718 first, and whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair Atterbury and Vice Chair Washington and members of the mighty Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Mike Rogers of State of District 32, Anne Arundel County. I respectfully request a favorable report of House Bill 718. This bill would alter the number of members of the Local Development Council for a video lottery facility located in Anne Arundel County, requiring the county executive of Anne Arundel County to appoint a certain number of delegates who represent a certain district or their designees to the Local Development Council, and generally relating to the local development councils for the video lottery facility in Anne Arundel County. This bill simply adds a third delegate who represents the district where the communities surrounding the video lottery facilities are located. You should also find supporting testimony from the Anne Arundel County executive and a delegation letter of unanimous support. Therefore, I request favorable support for House Bill 718.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Delegate Rogers on that bill? Okay, that concludes the testimony on House Bill 718. Moving to House Bill 461, and there are 8 witnesses after the delegate who will have 2 minutes each. So Delegate Rogers, when you're ready.
Thank you again, Madam Chair Atterbury, Vice Chair Washington, and members of the Ways and Means Committee. For the record, I am still Delegate Mike Rogers, Legislative District 32, Anne Arundel County. I respectfully request a favorable report of House Bill 461. This bill will increase from $15,000 to $20,000 the amount of subtraction modification under Maryland's income tax for individuals who are 55 years of age for retirement income received as a result of individual's military service or attributable to the individual's employment as a correctional officer, a law enforcement officer, or fire rescue or emergency services personnel. House Bill 461 expands the existing military retirement income tax subtraction modification by increasing to the maximum amount of retired income that can be excluded to the $20,000. In order to qualify this modification, the resident must be at least 55. This bill also expands the existing state subtraction modification for required law enforcement and correctional officers, as well as fire, rescue, and emergency services personnel by exempting up to $20,000 in eligible retirement income for residents 55 and older. This expansion is phased in over 2 tax years beginning in 2023. Expanding the subtraction modification will make Maryland a more desirable place to live for military, fire, rescue, emergency service, and public safety retirees. It will also encourage retirees to remain in Maryland after age 55 as they begin to contemplate life after completely leaving the workforce. 34 states have fully exempted military retirement income from taxation. A 35th state, Nebraska, starts this year, which positions all of these states as potentially more desirable retirement locations than Maryland. Expanding this income tax subtraction modification not only benefits Maryland retired veterans and first responders, it also benefits the state. The spending by this group of retirees benefits local businesses, and their knowledge and experience benefits prospective employers and communities. I respectfully request a favorable report of House Bill 461.
Thank you, Delegate. And next, Thomas Jaworski, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Delegate Rogers, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Tom Czerkowski. I'm a retired Navy Rear Admiral who served on active duty for 31 years, both as an enlisted man and an officer. I serve on the board of the directors of the Military Officers Association of America, and I've lived here in Annapolis for 28 years. I've chosen to remain in the state despite its high taxes. Many of those whom I have served with in the Navy have chosen not to live in Maryland because of those taxes. Unfortunately, many Maryland companies and organizations could have taken advantage of the many professional and leadership skills that these individuals develop in the military. The reason they chose to live in other states is that their new states don't tax military pensions. They found excellent jobs and great quality of lives. And with these new jobs, they pay the required state income tax, of course, which generates more revenue for their new state. Additionally, businesses in their new states benefit from the economic activity they create, groceries, rent, mortgage payments, for example. So why not keep these people in Maryland? There are currently 35 states that fully exempt military pensions from taxation, and several others are moving towards it, including nearby Delaware. The Towson University Regional Economic Studies Institute did a study which the General Assembly directed several years ago to examine the financial impact of retired military personnel on the Maryland economy. And that report said that if Maryland doesn't exempt military retirement pay from state and local income taxes, retired service members are going to choose to move to military retiree-friendly states. I've attached an opinion piece on this issue to my written testimony, which offers a more detailed argument. It appeared in yesterday's Capitol Gazette, and I would ask the committee to please consider legislation that will encourage retired military personnel to remain or come to Maryland. Thank you very much for this opportunity today.
Thank you. Next, Robert Norton, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bob Norton from District 19. I am a retired Army officer and the president of the Maryland Military Coalition. We have about 150,000 members of the military connected community in our coalition. That's about 1 out of every 3 military connected veterans in our state. But if you add in the spouses, the family members, and the survivors of deceased military members, it represents a significant portion of our population in the state. Admiral Jerkowski really outlined a number of the arguments that I was going to make. I would just say that my own written testimony goes into the Towson report and also talks about the fact that the just recently retired treasurer of our state, Nancy Kopp, has indicated that we have a chronic and in fact a severe shortage of state workers in Maryland. What better resource than to recruit retiring service people into these positions, because these folks have served admirably in large, complex organizations. They have the leadership skills, they have the can-do attitude to be successful and to remain in our state. Yesterday, and I just learned this, yesterday the state of Arizona just released a blueprint based upon its passage last year, joining 34 other states, passage of a bill to eliminate the state's tax. And they called their press release, Arizona to Veterans, come work for us. It would be great if we could say the same thing in our state. Maryland to veterans, come work for us. This is about incentivizing our great young men and women who are interested in second careers, incentivizing them to live, work, and pay taxes in our state. That is fundamentally why this has been passed in 35 other states. And with that, I strongly recommend a favorable report on HB 461. And I would like to thank Delegate Mike Rogers for his leadership on behalf of the military connected community in our state. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And next, I am happy to see my partner from back in when I was first elected, when we did the firefighter and EMS training. And I remember standing there, I'm all suited up with all the gear, looking at him and going, wait a minute, is that like a real fire in the building? So very happy to see you, Michael Runn. Welcome to Ways and Means. And I'm in a different position. I've come a long way since we went through that burning building. Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
So you absolutely have. You've come a long way. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Ways and Means Committee. My name is Mike Runda. I'm the president, president emeritus of the Professional Firefighters of Maryland. I retired after 32 years of being a firefighter in Howard County. And I was able to take advantage of what this committee did for us back in 2018 by passing the Hometown Heroes. It certainly helped me and my family. And the hope of passing that legislation was to encourage firefighters to stay in Maryland after they retire, spend their hard-earned pensions in Maryland. We accomplished that to an extent. We did it for 10 years. So at 55 to 65, I'm able to take advantage of that tax benefit that in Maryland's offered firefighters and first responders and police officers. The problem comes is once I turn 65, that benefit gets shut off. It's subject to the offset of the Social Security offset provision by the Maryland tax code. This legislation will fix that. It'll allow it, I think I got lost. It'll allow me to continue collecting that past 65. So with that, I would encourage a favorable report of House Bill 461. I also want to say this is phased in over 3 years, so it doesn't happen right away. So with that, I want to urge the committee for a favorable report on House Bill 461. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is another one of my favorite people from the wonderful county of Howard, Rich Rule. Welcome to Ways and Means.
Thank you. Good to see you. Good afternoon, Chair Atterbury and members of the committee. The firefighters put on the line every day protecting lives and property throughout our state. After long careers protecting the communities they served, too many move out of Maryland once they reach retirement to take advantage of the tax breaks they receive from other nearby states. I'm sure you've heard before that Pennsylvania, like other states, does not tax Social Security or any eligible pension plan. Furthermore, it does not tax distributions from 401ks, deferred compensation plans, or other retirement accounts. After years of our members retiring out of state, continuing to move the ball forward on the elimination of income tax on service-related retirement benefits would be a great step to ensuring that the people who spend their lives in service to others are given the support and tax relief that they deserve to stay and retire in Maryland. This committee has heard from me and others in the past on this matter, but the underlying economics bear repeating. An annual report called Pensionomics, published by the National Institute on Retirement Security, analyzes retirement data in all 50 states. For Maryland specifically, it reports that each $1 in state and local pension benefits paid to Maryland residents ultimately supported $1.39 in total economic activity in the state. Looking further at 3 retiree tax-friendly states, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Florida, the Pensionomics report calculates their total pension-related economic output at $1.67, $1.55, and $1.68 respectively. I submit that there is almost certainly a correlation between those higher figures and the tax laws in place in those states. It would make sense that Maryland will gain by bringing retiree tax laws into closer alignment with states such as these. While I can't speak to other jurisdictions in Maryland, I can report that since 2017, at least 25% of our retiring members moved out of state after completing their service to Howard County, all to retirement tax-friendly states. Let's keep their hard-earned retirement dollars in Maryland by showing them that their service to the greater Maryland community was indeed appreciated. On behalf of the members of the Howard County Professional Firefighters Association, we encourage a favorable report on House Bill 461. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Bryson Popham, please.
Thank you, Chair Atterbury, members of the committee. Bryson Popham appearing before you on behalf of the Army Alliance. The Army Alliance is a nonprofit advocacy organization that exists to promote the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Harford County and the surrounding defense community. We are appearing in support of House Bill 461. I also wish to thank Delegate Rogers and I believe his 19 co-sponsors for introducing this bill and would point out to the committee that this bill or something very, very close to it passed the Senate last year. I am focusing my testimony on one line on one page of the bill. It's page 3, line 2. You have heard from some other witnesses about it, and I would urge the committee to take a look at that. It simply increases the subtraction modification from $15,000 to $20,000. And I'll explain why that's important in a moment. But there's a unique situation with military retirees, and that's why this bill is so very important. because military retirees are a very vital part of the workforce for our Maryland military installations. Why? Because for most of the jobs there, they have to have security clearances, and military retirees have such clearances. Other potential employees do not. As far as the need for the bill goes, I simply want to point out an example that I heard on a similar bill a year or two ago from former member of the committee, Delegate Teresa Riley, who lives, as you may recall, up in Northern Maryland. She said in open committee, "I'm tired of seeing so many cars go by my house at night and cross the Pennsylvania line to go there." That, I think, is a telling example of what this bill would do. Now, my office provided to the committee earlier today a copy of the Regional Economic Studies Institute report on workforce development. I would urge you to at least look at the executive summary there. That will support the argument for the military retirement relief in this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Popham. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
And for these reasons, Madam Chair, we would respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 461.
Thank you. Next, Ms. Cheryl Glang, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the committee members. My name is Cheryl Glang, and I am in District 6. I am a spouse of a retired Rear Admiral in the NOAA Corps, the smallest of the 8 uniformed services. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on HB 461 in my role as a member of the MOA Maryland Council of Chapters, Spouse and Surviving Spouse Liaison, and also a past president of the NOAA Corps Officers Family Association. NOAA's headquarters is in Silver Spring, Maryland, and many of our officers with assignments here live in Maryland. Once they retire, some will call Maryland home and take second careers in the government or the private sector. However, each year that more and more states offer full retirement pay exemptions, 3 of these states currently within close proximity to Maryland, and the current remote work trends, Maryland becomes a less desirable retirement state for our retirees and their spouses. These retirees and spouses bring key resources, skills, and values to their jobs and their communities. They are individuals that the state should strive to retain. For more than 2 decades, MOA and other service-related organizations in the state have been strongly advocating for legislative action to help make the state a more desirable retirement destination for retirees, their spouses, and family. And HB 461 is an incremental step in the right direction. Delegate Rogers' bill takes the next logical step toward the ultimate 100% objective. As you consider the many similar bills in this topic, I ask that you advance HB 461 by giving it a favorable report out of the Ways and Means Committee. Thank you so much for your time, Madam Chair. Have a great day all.
Thank you. Next, David Dragix, please, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair Atterbury, and distinguished members of the Ways and Means Committee, and thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of Delegate Rogers' bill, HB 461. My name is David Dragix. I'm in District 30A. I'm a retired Army colonel and the legislative liaison of the Fort Meade chapter of the Military Officers Association of America. MOA chapters are our advocates for the uniformed services community at the state and local levels. Further, the chapters have been advocating for legislative action to make Maryland more desirable for current uniformed services retiree residents and a more desirable retirement destination for second career service retirees. Our chapter, one of 10 in Maryland, currently has 95 members, with approximately 75% of them drawing military retirement pay. We strongly support this bill. To stay within my time limit, I want to summarize 2 key points in my written testimony submitted on Monday. First, according to the latest data from the Department of Defense, in Maryland, there are a total of 58,325 military retirees and military survivors receiving a total of $148 million in monthly payments. This bill would benefit those individuals and those of the other uniformed services as well by putting more of their disposable income into the Maryland economy. Second, there are nearly 29,000 assigned personnel at military installations in the state, and our state has one of the highest number of military installations in the country, contributing over 15% of our state's GDP according to the previously quoted Towson State University study. For the 15 to 17% of active duty personnel expected to retire from the military each year, this bill would help make the state an attractive retirement destination and serve to increase the pool of retirees that could help alleviate the growing shortage of state employees, recently pointed out by retired Treasurer Nancy Kopp. So I'm certain every member of this committee understands that Maryland needs to be more competitive with other states to attract and retain its fair share of military retirees. Our chapter recommends a favorable report on this bill. We thank retired Army Colonel Delegate Mike Rogers for not only his service, but also his leadership on this issue.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, David Peterson, please, for 2 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Peterson. I'm a retired captain from the NOAA Corps, and I am offering testimony on Delegate Rogers' bill today as the immediate past president of the MOA Montgomery County chapter. I believe that my written testimony will pretty much track what you have heard and will hear from my colleagues today. So that said, I would like to use my time to provide a bit of granular perspective as to the size of the pool of potential candidates for whom defense and cybersecurity employers will be competing as these service members currently assigned in Maryland retire. Until 2019, MOA provided each chapter president with a listing of recruiting prospects for chapter membership. They no longer do that, but I retained my 2019 listing of prospects residing in my catchment area, which is all of the Montgomery County zip codes, plus some from Northwest DC, a total of 4,739 names. Of these, some 2,375 or 57% indicated active duty status. These are the commissioned officers of all grades, most with security secret clearances and many with top secret clearances. I have no doubt that there are also a substantial number of senior enlisted folks who also have these clearances. These are the folks that employers are seeking and for whom an employer would not need to immediately expend resources to have their security clearances done before they would be hired. My chapter is the largest one in Maryland. Of the Maryland chapters, 8 of them have large military installations in their catchment areas. Other chapter presidents have received listings like the one I referred to. I do not have access to them, but if other chapters have a similar proportion of officers on active duty as I had, then the potential pool of candidates would seem to be quite large. Taking action on military retired pay would help make it more possible for Maryland employers to reasonably compete for the chance to hire these qualified citizens and keep them in Maryland with all the benefits that would accrue to the state thereby.
Mr. Peterson, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up your testimony, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Our chapter would ask you to return a favorable report. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thanks to Mike Rogers for introducing the bill.
Thank you. And questions? I see Delegate Rose has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Rogers, for this bill. And I maybe would direct my question maybe to both Delegate Rogers or Mr. Peterson. I do work as an IT recruiter and have for over 12 and a half years. And would you not say that the way that Maryland is geographically located, we are directly and constantly competing for this military talent with security clearances directly to our south into Delaware, Pennsylvania, and we're also competing with companies who are paying large hiring bonuses to entice them to places such as Huntsville and Texas. Would that be correct?
Delegate Rose, thank you for the question and thank you for what you do recruiting and hiring retired military people. So the answer is yes. And I would also add that you could have thrown in West Virginia and New Jersey as well.
In addition, most of these folks, not only just having the clearance, but considering the types of bases and work that we have here in the state of Maryland and in Virginia, and somewhat in maybe Johnstown, Pennsylvania, these are highly skilled IT professionals, risk professionals, who command very high salaries, and as Maryland residents would pay a very good state income tax in general, just in their new job, notwithstanding the retirement reduction.
Delegate Rose, yes. As a matter of fact, I know a lot of friends and even a former boss who moved to Pennsylvania just so that his military retired income, as well as his civil service retirement income, would not be taxed. And I would ask Mr. Peterson if he'd want to add to that.
I will share one piece of information that I heard and saw. The Military Officers Association of America publishes a wonderful magazine monthly. There was some advertising done in that magazine that was done by a real estate firm in Pennsylvania that was focused on folks going to Fort George G. Meade for work, and they wanted them to live in Pennsylvania, drive to Fort Meade, and then go home to Pennsylvania at the end of the day. And that's not what Maryland wants.
Well, I appreciate that. And living in Carroll County, right near the Pennsylvania line, I see that same line of cars that Delegate Riley brought up as well. So thank you so much for the bill. We've heard several of them similar to this year, and I know I keep bringing up the same things, but I think it's really important to really realize what common sense legislation this would be. Isn't that so?
Thank you, Delegate Rose. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Delegate Rogers, and everyone who testified. That concludes the testimony on House Bill 461. And that concludes the hearings today for the Ways and Means Committee. Members, tomorrow we have a 1 p.m. joint briefing with appropriations on the blueprint. Then we have hearings at 3 p.m. And then when those hearings are done, we will have a brief voting session. So we did a lot of work today. Thank you, everyone. We heard from 95 witnesses, and get some rest because we got a lot of work to do tomorrow. So thank you, everyone.
Hold on, local revenues, we're meeting right after this. So local revenues, click on the next link.